I'm very happy to be here, and I want to thank UOC for inviting me. This is my second visit to UOC. The previous visit I was up on the hill where your other office is, and so I want to thank Elena and Albert and everybody who was instrumental in inviting me here for this, for this little time to spend with you. I would very much like to learn about what you're doing too. So when you do ask questions, please talk about your experiences too, because I will then get an idea about what you're doing, and I will share my experiences with you. What we planned on is for me to talk about 45 minutes, and then for you to ask questions. And then I also understand that there will be an hour session for people who want to wait and ask more questions. And I will very much like this dialogue with you. If at any point you don't understand what I'm saying, can you please raise your hand? Then I will know how to, adjust myself. I must apologize. I don't know Spanish. I don't know Catalan, so I cannot do very much in that area. I know a few words in Spanish, in French, so I have been able to get around. But I am rather uncomfortable by the fact that I don't know any Spanish after living in New Mexico for now 18 years. I took one class in Spanish, I have to admit, but I felt that learning a language requires really immersion, and I just have not had the time to do it. My plan is one summer to go to Mexico and learn Spanish. I thought of Mexico rather than here, mostly because we have a lot of people who come from Mexico to New Mexico. So it's good to be able to interact in the same kind of language that is spoken in Mexico. Okay, my topic today is on online communities and how to develop them, how to design them, how to develop them, and how to assess them. And I'm assuming that in your UOC courses that you are concerned about this issue. So this is why I selected this topic. Okay, so what I will do here is to discuss developing online communities. I realize that it's in here. Discuss developing online communities of practice based on the WISCOM instructional design model that we developed, and it was published in 2006 in the Distance Education Journal, which comes out of Australia. Then I will demonstrate the design of a COP in two forums. One is a UNM online graduate course. I teach a course called Culture and Global E-Learning, and so I will demonstrate it in that course, as well as in a Moodle forum, which I used as a faculty development forum for faculty in Sri Lanka. I'm originally from Sri Lanka, and last year I took a leave of absence from UNM, and I went to Sri Lanka to help the Ministry of Higher Education develop a national online distance education system for the country. So I was invited as a consultant to train faculty, that is teachers who will be, that is university professors and people in organizations who will be teaching online. So I developed this 14-module faculty development forum in Moodle because they had selected Moodle as their learning management system. So I will show you an example from there. And also I'll discuss interaction analysis as a method for assessing learning in communities of practice. So COP stands for communities of practice. I developed a model in 1997, which has been used widely, and I'm quite surprised that people are still using it. And so I will briefly discuss that, and I will also discuss some of the challenges of using that model. And then I will talk a little bit about a theoretical framework for assessing the development of COPs in Web 2.0 collective intelligence applications. We just developed a paper on that and sent it to a journal on educational media. It's under review yet, it has not been published, but I will briefly discuss the framework we used to develop that paper. Okay, our WISCOM model. WISCOM stands for Wisdom Communities. Okay, so that's the shortened form for that's what WISCOM means, wisdom communities. So essentially, the goal is to really develop communities that are wise online. Wisdom for us is, who is a wise person is a question that I get asked. You know, how do you define a wise person? For me, a wise person is someone who knows their limitations, who knows how much they know and how much they don't know, somebody who's humble about their knowledge, and somebody who's willing to help others also enhance their goals and knowledge. So wisdom, we want to develop people who are wise, who are able to think critically, who are able to problem solve, but also people who are humble about what they know. Now, the basic concepts of a wisdom community is the fact that it is really important to build a cohesive online learning community. So the center of a wisdom community, the design of a wisdom community should involve developing a very cohesive community. The second component is, in order to develop communities, you need to provide them with support. So developing learner support as well as mentoring. And mentoring can be in different formats, but mentoring is an important concept. And so wise communities cannot happen by themselves. You also need to support them as well as to mentor them to become wise. The third one is knowledge innovation, and it is similar to what you might know as knowledge management. So whatever is developed within a community should also be preserved for the future. And so knowledge innovation is capturing what is developed as a result of community interaction. And the goal of the community is to really engage in transformational learning, and that is to reflect on our experiences and our points of view, and through discussion also maybe sometimes change those points of view. So transformational learning as defined for a wise community is changes of perspectives. I know Jack Miseru defined transformational learning as changes in perspectives as a result of a dilemma that people go through. Now, we don't consider that it is necessary for people to really have a dilemma to go through transformational learning. We feel that transformational learning can happen as a result of exchanges with other people who have different points of view. So for us, transformational learning is changes in perspectives. Now, why did we develop this model? You know, you might ask that question. One of the things that I have found as I develop online courses is the fact that the ADDIE model that we are all, many of us are familiar with, which is the analysis, design, development, implementation, evaluation model. And perhaps you know the name Garnier. You know, he was responsible for developing one of the ADDIE models. But there are many others who've developed variations. So you have Dick and Carey, you have Smith and Reagan, whom I like. But many of them have developed different variations of this ADDIE model. Now, when we started using the ADDIE model to develop online learning environments, we found several challenges. One challenge is the fact that the ADDIE model describes the learner population as having the same characteristics. And we know that individual learners differ, and that they bring different learning styles, they bring different cultural frameworks, and therefore it is very difficult for us to determine that all learners come with the same characteristics and will go out with the same kinds of knowledge and learning outcomes. So that is one challenge I faced. The second one is the fact that it takes a very long time to develop an online design based on the ADDIE model because of the phases that you have to go through. Many of us know, we might have only about a month, for example, to develop an online course, and then we have to work at it in a very fast way. We utilize this concept of rapid prototyping, where you develop a little bit and then you test it out and then you develop the second. So that kind of development cycle is more of what we do online or through for designing multimedia, rather than going through all the cycles of the ADDIE model and the phases of the ADDIE model. So that was a challenge. So there were several other challenges. And mostly I felt that the ADDIE model really didn't give us a lot of guidelines for developing the concept of interaction and social presence, etc., online, that is so necessary for online learners who learn in a different context from face to face. So the ADDIE model worked well for face-to-face interaction when you were able to develop it as a system. But when you went online for different kinds of purposes, it really wasn't very good. Although the overall framework of the ADDIE model in terms of analyzing, designing, developing, implementing and evaluation is a worthwhile concept, all the details were really not provided for the online environment. So we decided that the online environment is fairly unique and different, and therefore these characteristics, if we design an online environment based on these characteristics, it might work better. So this is how we developed this model. So we developed this model as a result of both a review of literature as well as practice in teaching online. Okay, one of the things that we decided was there must be certain criteria for developing an online learning community in terms of developing a cohesive community. The first one is there must be some metaphor of community building. What do we expect of a community? Like if we want wise communities, what is a good metaphor to describe a wise community? And we adopted the concept of giftedness from the New Mexico Caribbean speaking communities. Now in New Mexico we have several. We have 19 pueblos. Elena knows those. Elena has visited some of them. Native American communities. Some of those Native American communities, and this is before the Spanish came over. So some of these communities speak Caribbean, which is a native language, and Romero is a Native American. She is from the Cochiti Pueblo, and she decided to do this study to define what intelligence is in these native communities, because she was a special ed teacher. Mary Romero was a special ed teacher, and she's found that many Native American kids were being described or categorized as special education, that they required additional help and support. When she met these kids, she realized that they really didn't need much help. They were being taught in a different way, and so it was difficult for them to adjust to a different way of teaching. That was the problem. So she went into these communities to understand from the community perspective what is meant by intelligence. How do they define intelligence in each of the communities? And what she came up with was this concept of giftedness. The communities, the word in their Caribbean Pueblo communities for intelligence was gifted, and gifted was defined as someone who is able to help the community grow. That is how someone can contribute to the community. So we use that metaphor as central for our community building. So it's an individual's ability to contribute to the good of the community. So that's our metaphor that we used for the communities that we design online. And we communicate this metaphor to the communities, that is the learning communities, in our design. So I think one thing that you have to decide is you have to let the students know who are new to online learning what is expected of them as a community member. What are some of the characteristics that they should have as part of this learning community. The second one is you must communicate to them the importance of community, a sense of community, collaboration, working with others, and interaction. And these must become central in the course design. Because if they don't become central in the course design, people are not going to be engaged in collaboration. They are not going to be engaged in the working of the community. So these must become central in the course design. You know, very often you hear this question about people designing online discussion groups and nobody's interacting, and they want to know why. Well, if you don't make the interaction a central part of the course design, and if they do not get evaluated for what they contribute through that interaction, most probably people will not engage in it. So community, collaboration and interaction must become central in the course design. That's really important. The third one is assessment. The learning that they do and the assessment methods that we use must reward the collaboration. Collaboration is not easy to do online. It takes more time than face-to-face collaboration. So our evaluation methods, our assessment methods of learning must give importance to the collaboration they do, contribution to the community and products developed within the community. So all my assessment methods, when I'm developing learning communities, center on the contributions that are made towards the community. So they get points for how they have helped each other, for mentoring each other, and for collaborating with each other to develop the community. So they get points for the process of learning as well as the products that they develop. So let's say if somebody has not contributed to the community development of the product, then they lose points. Now an interesting thing happened. I want to give you this example of how when you build a cohesive community, how people take care of each other. Last semester when I was teaching my course, you know, I have in my course, what I do is I have small groups. I put people into small groups right from the beginning. I look at all their, when they develop their profiles, I look at all their professional interests. And what I do is I put them into groups. Usually groups of 3 work very well. But if I have a large class, maybe groups of 5. And I group people who have very different interests and who have very different expertise so that they can learn from each other. So I have these groups go through the entire course working in small groups and sometimes interacting with the large group. And that way I make it comfortable for people who are new to online learning to be part of the group. Now in one group, one student had a very difficult problem. His mother was dying of cancer and he had to leave the state very often to take care of his mother. And during the last phase of that class, you know, during the last month of that class, he had a very, very difficult time. So he informed his group that he was not really able to contribute. He tried to do his best when he took his computer with him and he tried to get online, but his mind was not in the class. I mean, when your mother is dying, you know, this is not very important. Doing your class is not the most important thing in your life. And so the group, because they had become such a cohesive group as they developed, the group decided to help this guy. And they said, you know, we will do your share too. You know, one day maybe you can help somebody else. And so the group told me that they have taken on his responsibilities. The other members of the group had taken on his responsibilities to see that the group product was done and to see that he was able to pass this group project, which really was great because I was really surprised that the group members were so willing to put their share, put additional time to do the share that he was assigned because they wanted him to succeed as a group member. So I was really touched by that. Well, he had to take an incomplete in the class and finish it, but for his group project, because it was complete and it was done very well, he got grades. Now, he didn't really contribute much, but at the same time, he also learned a great deal about what it means to be a cohesive community and how he needs to help others when he does group projects. Actually, he's one of the people who's also helping this UOC-UNM collaboration we are developing. So people learn different things when they work in groups. They may not learn the thing that you learn the content that you expected them to learn, but they learn different skills in terms of group collaboration and how you support each other when others have difficulties. Okay, so anyway, in terms of building a wisdom community, of course, we develop it based on social constructivist theories and constructivist theories. But here are some concepts. You know, as I said, giftedness and contribution to the community is an important criterion that they have to have in mind. Also, another concept is empowerment of members. That is, you help each other to become what they want to become. So you empower them. You give them the power to become what they want to become. Also, the group must have a shared identity. That is, this is really important, because if group members start going in different directions, it's difficult for groups to work together towards the same goal. So shared identity is really important, and identity building is really important. And this is something that we concentrate on at the beginning of the semester, especially the first 2 weeks of the semester, to help the group develop a shared identity. Reflection and dialogue are the processes that a group engages in, because they need to reflect on the work that they do, and they need to also improve themselves as a group. So the first product that they develop as a group may not be as great as the products they develop later, because they learn from the group products, as well as from the feedback that they receive from the instructors. Another very important concept is mutual trust and respect and commitment. So if you don't trust each other, it is very likely that you will not want to work with each other. If you don't respect each other and the knowledge that each other brings, you are most likely to think that you don't have anything to learn from the group members. And also commitment to the group goals, that you must be committed to ensuring that the group, as a group, you achieve success. And those things are very important concepts that we really try to communicate to everybody who joins my class. Another way to enhance group community building is through this concept of social presence. How many of you are familiar with the concept of social presence? Okay, good. I've written somewhat on social presence at the beginning. I really haven't done much, but I'm really looking at social presence from a cultural perspective now, and I think I find it very interesting, because in certain cultures, I think social presence is appreciated. In other cultures, it is not so appreciated. But let me describe it for those of you who might be new to this concept. And social presence is the degree to which a person is perceived as a real person in mediated communication. In simple words, this is the feeling that we have of the other person at the end of the communication line. So let's say I didn't know any of you physically, face to face, but I started communicating with you online or through the telephone or through television, and it's my feeling of the connection I have with you. And this is this term, social presence, and the definition of social presence was developed by Short, Williams, and Christie in their book on social psychology of telecommunications. It's a pretty old book, you know, it was published in 1976. But many people have started working with social presence since then. It is a factor of two things. One is the concept of intimacy, and the other is the concept of immediacy. Intimacy is a factor of the medium itself. So if you compare television and radio, for example, television has the ability to convey more of a sense of presence, because it can code the message in all three coding devices, you know, iconic, analog, and digital. Okay? So it has more of a capability to show the way we look, the way we, you know, dress, the way we use nonverbal cues, all of that, whereas radio doesn't. So if you take the two media, if you compare those two media, radio has less of a capability to communicate social presence than television. So that's when you discuss it as a factor of the medium, different media have different capabilities. Now, also the internet communication, if you don't have the video capabilities and if you don't have the graphic capabilities of the medium, like when we used to communicate through listservs, computer-based communication was considered to be very low in terms of social presence. However, social presence is not merely a factor of the medium itself. There is another concept related to social presence which is called immediacy. And immediacy is the psychological distance between the communicators, right? So if we take the same medium, two very different people can communicate very differently through that medium because of their personalities and the way they project themselves. So if you take the medium of television, the first picture versus the second picture, in the first picture the person is very aloof and standoffish, whereas in the second picture the person is smiling, is able to connect with others. So just like that, you know, maybe Teresa and I, if we decide to communicate, Teresa might be able to communicate with you more closely. She smiles, she can speak the language, she has so many other things, she can communicate with you better than me. So I might be more standoffish and I might be more nervous or whatever. So our personalities will come out differently in the same medium. So this is the concept of immediacy. Now we feel that people can be trained to really generate social presence. Now, intimacy is something that is given because the medium has different coding systems which we cannot change. But we certainly can change the people who communicate by enhancing their techniques of communication. So now this is one of the things that we have to really train our online instructors to do, to train them to generate that kind of presence online. So when I design my online classes, one of the ways in which I generate this sense of presence of me is to tell my students a lot about me, about who I am as a person, what my likes are, what my dislikes are. I put pictures of myself traveling all over the world, which is something I do. And I talk about how I like to travel and what I learned from traveling. I talk about my hobbies. I like to garden, so I talk about my garden. I put pictures of my garden. So I tell them more about myself. And when you self-disclose, it is easier to connect with the other. People see you as a real person, especially the instructors. When they come to a learning situation, they think of the instructor as somebody who's higher up than them, that the instructor has a lot to communicate and teach them they think of themselves as somebody who is there to learn. Actually, the instructor can learn a lot from the students themselves. So in order to tell them, I am one with you to learn here, I communicate to them a sense of me as a real person, as an individual, a human being. This is very important for people who will never see you, because for them it is difficult to get a connection with you, because here is that instructor far, far away, about whom you don't have much of a sense. But if you can communicate more of a sense of you, that helps. You can do a little video segment too. I do a little video introduction so that they see who I am, how I speak, etc. Okay, so social presence, can be communicated by the way you dress, the way you talk, and the way you use your nonverbal cues. So this is one thing to focus on as you develop online courses. How you generate a presence of yourself as the instructor so that the people who never see you get that feeling of a close connection with you and that feel that you're a human being. The other thing that an instructor specifically, or who usually acts as a facilitator or a moderator, does is we play different roles to build a community and help in knowledge construction. One is we humanize the learning environment. That is, make everybody feel welcome, make everybody feel that they have an equal voice in the class, that they are all participants in the class, that have an equal opportunity to participate. The other one is, how do you achieve group goals? How we as facilitators really have to help groups achieve their goals. So when I have my little groups working on their own, I go into these groups and I see what's happening, and if things are not happening too well, I give them some feedback and help them achieve the goal that they are there to achieve. And also, to promote learning, one of the things I do is I weave comments. Weaving comments is you make connections between comments, So if the group cannot do it on their own, I help them. I go and say, well, Elena said this, Teresa said this, Lourdes said this. Here we are seeing a pattern, and I make those connections. Another one is to synthesize, and the synthesis is, again, a little bit more advanced than weaving. Weaving, you show the connections. In synthesis is you try to make conclusions of the comments that were woven. And summarizing is a very good technique. I always have my classes summarize the discussions at the end of every week. And then this can be like a query posing synthesis where they come up with the question at the end after they have analyzed it and done the synthesis. So these are very important skills that a facilitator skills that a facilitator must have to develop a learning community. Okay, mentoring, I said, is like the backbone, this backbone here. That's what holds a community together. I have looked at different ways of mentoring. You can look at online community collaboration as a mentoring framework. The instructor is a very important mentor. And we distinguish between who is a mentor and who is a tutor. For example, a mentor is somebody who really helps the students achieve their goals. Tutor is someone who helps them with the content of the course. So we do both. We do both in terms of helping them with the content as well as helping them with their other issues that help them to achieve the goals. Moderators as mentors, these can be students who are placed in the role of mentoring, and community members as mentors. So you can bring anybody from the community like guest experts. One time, Elena invited me to be a guest in one of the UOC classes she was teaching. And so it was on distance education design, right?
Yeah, well, yes.
Yeah. So I was the guest speaker for 2 weeks while I was in Morocco at that time during my sabbatical. And, you can bring in anybody from the community who can act as a mentor. Also, one thing that's important is that you select the roles of mentoring. Who is going to be the mentor, who is going to be the mentee, etc. And peer mentoring is a very important thing. To set up peers, get your students to mentor each other. And usually, when you set up the peer mentoring relationship, you have to figure out what is the person mentoring on. So one person may be good, may have prior experience with the content that they are learning. One person may have more experience with the technology. And so you have to decide when you're doing peer mentoring relationships, who is the person who's going to teach the other person about what. That's something that you have. So role models, and you have to really also look at the activities. And one of the things that I have worked on, which works fairly well, is to ask the students who have completed one of my classes to be the mentors for the new people. So my mentees are the new people who enrolled this semester. My mentors are the people who've taken the class and completed it. So very often it's voluntary, so you have to really help them, motivate them to do this. And I always tell them you can get a line in your vita and say that you were a mentor for this class if you do this. So you motivate them with different kinds of incentives. And usually my doctoral students, because we also expect our doctoral students to contribute to the department, like to do it. And they did a wonderful job with the trainees I had in Sri Lanka. All of them volunteered to be mentors for my trainees in Sri Lanka, which was a great cross-cultural experience for them. So you've got different ways to select this one. Learner support. I like to use this model that Dillon and Blanchard developed in 1991. I know it's very old, but it's a very good framework for designing learner support. One is, learner support. You have to figure out what is the learner support that's necessary that addresses learner needs. Different kinds of learners have different needs. Just like my student who had his mother dying of cancer, well, that was a different need he had. Learner support and the needs of the content. So given the content, the subject matter, the discipline, what are some learner support needs that different people will have? The third one is learner support related to the institutional context. In UNM, we have a huge challenge with this. The reason is that we are a dual mode institution. We teach, the University of New Mexico is predominantly a research university which teaches people face to face. That's the traditional format. Some programs are taught at a distance, like the nursing program has their master's in nursing and PhD in nursing at a distance. Engineering has master's degrees at a distance. The College of Education, my program, organizational learning and instructional technology has programs at a distance like that. Okay? So for us, for a traditional institution, it's very difficult to really support online learners. Whereas for you, all your learners are online. All your learners are learning at a distance. So you have more of an open university model. But we have a real challenge helping our learners through the institutional context. The next one is learner support related to communication through technology. Now, this is a very important concern because even people who are very proficient in technology need help with how to learn online or how to learn through television, how to learn through radio. I did a consulting project for Intel, and Intel established a corporate university to train their employees all over the United States, as well as they have a plant in Ireland as well as in Israel. And so I evaluated Intel's distance learning system. And one of the things we found was that many students who are engineers who use computers every day in their life told us that it was a real shock for them to be in a learning environment where you actually learned through computers. They do their work on computers, but for them to actually take a course online was a very new experience. And they said that they didn't attend the orientation. There was an orientation that they were asked to attend. They didn't attend the orientation because they felt they are proficient in computers, so why should they need to learn how to learn online? But they felt that that was the biggest challenge. So even people who are very proficient in computers need to be oriented on how to learn online. What are the things that they need to be aware of? Because many of them have learned in face-to-face context. They have been lectured to, or they have learned through television. But they haven't really experienced online learning, and online learning was new for them. And so one of the highest predictors of learner success or learner satisfaction was computer self-efficacy, the ability to feel I can learn through a computer, learn a course like a graduate level course through a computer. So it's very important to orient learners to computer technology. The next one is knowledge innovation, which is like knowledge management. And what is really important is, I'm not going to explain the whole graphic because actually our paper does that, but what is really important is to consider how you preserve the knowledge that is generated through the interaction with your participants. And so one of the techniques that we have used for preserving knowledge in my classes is concept mapping. And actually, when we came here in 2004, we talked about concept mapping because one of my doctoral students, Ludmila, really addressed concept mapping. Now, here's an example of a concept map developed by an individual student to describe the African Virtual University. And his project, I assigned different institutions to my students, and they have to share experiences. And here was the concept map he developed to discuss his framework for explaining the African Virtual University. So actually, we evaluated his learning through this concept map. The second one was a group-moderated discussion, and the group that moderated the discussion synthesized the information using this concept map. So here's an example of a group putting a concept map together. And both these two concept maps were done using the inspiration program. The third one was done using CMAP, and this is where the instructor was able to help a group develop the concept map for their group project as it was being done. So normally we, as instructors, we wait till the group project is over to give them feedback. But when they were developing the concept map, the concept for the group task, using the CMap software, which is, a distributed concept mapping program, I was able to go as the instructor and comment on the different components of the project. So for example, if you look at that faculty center, that blue link, let's see if I can, this one here. If you look at that one, there is a little tab here, and that's where I have given a comment. And because this is online, not online, I cannot show you, but here's another one where I have gone and provided a comment. So I, as the instructor, was able to provide them with comments as they developed the group project. This group project was on diabetes prevention. They developed a program to train people in diabetes prevention for the state of New Mexico. So I had some group of people in health education in this class. So one of the ways that we can change the culture of assessment is to provide feedback to people as they develop the projects. Okay. So essentially, given the basis of what I talked about, now what we have is, the wisdom community mentoring and learner support and knowledge innovation. One of the ways in which I take them through the learning process is to take them through a cycle of inquiry. First, they are given the case or problem or issue to be solved. Then, as a group, they initially explore what they know about the problem and they post their comments on that. Then they search for resources and share different perspectives, and they reflect and reorganize their perspectives, and they negotiate and preserve and share what they have come up with as a group with other members of the group, other members of the class. And they also preserve what they have come up with in the Knowledge Artifacts Forum. So there is a place for them to preserve what they came up as a group. So I'll show you some examples. Well, this is from my course. This is a WebCT forum. Are any of you familiar with WebCT? Do any of you use WebCT? You are familiar. Okay, this is WebCT Vista. And that's the forum that so I'm giving you some examples from my module 4. And here, the purpose of that module was to explore how information and communication technology can be used to provide non-formal distance education for women in developing countries. That was the goal. So first of all, what I do is I orient my students to the learning outcomes and then to the learning process and procedure. On the right, usually each of these modules span 2 weeks. On the right, I have dates. That is, when you give them 2 weeks, many people wait till the end of the 2 weeks to do their assignments. So I tell them, well, for this module, we start right from the beginning. October 8th most probably is the start date. You're supposed to read your thing. Then from October 8th to the 10th, you should have done this thing, so that I pace them so that they don't wait till the end. Because if they wait till the end, they've lost it. Then on the left side is the table of contents for the module, which describes the process that we go through. Okay, so next we go to the learning process, and these are some examples of the learning process and procedure. So I'm going to let you read that. Okay. And then I say the cycle of inquiry consists of 5 stages. First, we present the case. You initially explore what you know about the case. Then you find resources, share your perspectives, reflect and reorganize them, and then you negotiate your conclusions and you preserve the conclusions you came through. Okay, so the table of contents, you can see, first of all, we give the overview of the module, which is what you see here. That's the overview. Then I have a message from the facilitators, a little message, why this is important. Why is it important for us to consider how to help women in developing countries utilize ICT? Then the course is divided, the module is divided into, in this case, 2 case studies, sometimes more than 2. So I put the case study for group 1, case study for group 2. The case study for group 1 was to develop a health education, to develop a plan to provide health education to Afghani women who were in refugee camps in Pakistan. And I had gone to Pakistan and really seen this, and I realized this is a critical need. I had also found some literature. The second case study was to help Nigerian women market their crafts on the internet. Then I have the readings and resources. Then we have the group discussions for the 2 groups, readings and resources. Then the knowledge artifacts forum is where they actually post their stuff. And then we have the self and group evaluation form. They evaluate themselves as well as the group members and their participation. And then they go to their private journal and they reflect on what they learn. So that's how I know what they learn. Okay, here's the learning challenge. And essentially that's a little picture of, that's a picture of a woman with a chicken. And essentially she's asking the question, how can I market my chickens on the internet? And then that will lead into the questions that they will address. How does the cultural context impact the use of ICT for non-formal education and training of women at a distance? And what are the challenges to utilizing ICT for the education of women in developing countries? So what are some of the challenges that they have to face when they are going to use information technology? How can we design appropriate solutions through the use of ICT to empower women in developing countries? So what are some of the ways in which we can help them design it? So actually, the 2 groups had to come up with a grant proposal at the end. And this really was a role play situation. And the role play consisted of 3 roles. One was the leader of the women's group in this developing country. One was the leader of the non-governmental organization that helped them write it. And the third one was a Peace Corps volunteer who I had to put the American perspective in. The Peace Corps volunteer who was in this community helping this group develop this proposal. So here is the directions for the group discussions. Here are the group discussion, stuff. And I'm going to go really fast through this. Here are some examples. In this case, one student really did not go online to select the role. And so the group is discussing about it. And here, Rebecca is saying, here we are with a new learning challenge and a whole set of new rules. I've read the learning challenge and our case study, and if you don't mind, I would like to be the leader of the women's group who is requesting help to write the proposal. Please let me know what you think about it. So she selected her role and she wants to know what others think about it. And then this is Jason, who actually was located in Japan, talking about his perspectives. And Louisa, the third member, had not come in at this time and they were concerned. So what I do is I go there and I say, if you haven't heard from Louisa yet, go ahead and select the roles that you've already talked about, and Louisa will come in. And then actually Louisa does come in later. Here's an example from my faculty development course in Moodle that I did in Sri Lanka. And actually my students, my doctoral students at UNM functioned as e-mentors to train faculty in Sri Lanka how to do interactive learning online. And the 3 problems I had selected were 3 problems in the city. One was how to help street children, how to solve the traffic congestion in Sri Lanka, and how to solve the garbage disposal problem in Colombo. Now, because the faculty I trained came from different disciplines, engineering, medicine, you name it, I had to select a problem that was common to all of them. So I selected the problems that I saw on the streets. And my students learned about the problems in Sri Lanka. My trainees in Sri Lanka learned about how to do interactive learning from my students. So it was a great experience because e-mentoring was used for facilitating knowledge construction through intercultural experiences. Here is the Moodle wiki that they used for actually writing the report, and my students would go there and write the report also. Okay, can I ask for any questions you might have about designing and developing and what they said before I just talk briefly about assessing?